So why don't we start with you introducing yourself? Like, tell me, where you're at now, kind of your current status, and then we'll take a throwback to where you started from.
All right. Well, my name is Lyric Grumblatt. I'm just finished my official senior year at Rivier University in Nashua, New Hampshire. And I have 1 year of eligibility left due to COVID because that was my freshman year. So we didn't have a season. So I do have the chance to go back if I choose to. But I recently got an offer to go play overseas. So I'm still waiting on a couple of things and just kind of weighing out the options. But yeah, that's pretty much where I'm at right now.
Good place to be in.
Yeah.
Options.
Yep.
I was just looking at your bio on the Riviera website and like your stats, and averaging over 25 points a game this season, and killing it on a lot of fronts, at least offensively. I don't know what you're like as a defender. I don't see many stats about that, but
I led my conference in steals per game. So
oh,
I
there you go. That's a good stat to have. So I want to capture, where you started from. Like we call this the basketball parents journey. Like most of our listeners are parents, so they're trying to figure out like how do we get our recreational seventh grade player to get to high school and then maybe have a chance at college down the road. So tell me, when did you first start playing basketball? Like how old were you? Where was that at?
Officially, obviously school age started around like 6, but I was definitely bouncing a ball before then.
Yeah.
My grandfather on my dad's side was actually a Division 1 basketball player, huge guy, 6'6". Not with us anymore, but he was definitely one of the driving factors. I can remember him lifting me up to dunk on the hoop when I was too small to even get the ball to the rim. So it
Right.
definitely started there. And then officially in first grade, I was super excited to finally join the intramural team where it was just like on Saturday mornings at my elementary school. And then we did intramurals 1 through 3, and then fourth grade was when the fun started of like the travel teams. Yeah, but those intramural games were really fun for me. I think that's really fostered my love for the sport because it was just something I looked forward to all week long to do on Saturdays. I would have like my teachers be the coaches because it was just a fun thing for kids to do. So that's where it all started.
Yeah. And which elementary school were you at? Was that in Nashua?
I was in Manchester where I grew up.
Yeah.
It was at Highland Falls.
Cool. And then what was the program where you were playing on the fourth grade, like the travel team? Was that part of the town rec or where was that connected to?
Yeah, that was connected to my elementary school. So we would play just the different teams in the area for like the official travel league team, where you could say, yeah, I play for Highland Falls because the intramurals was also just in school. So you're playing like you're the people that you go to school with also, and you're just separated into different teams.
Right. Yeah. Intramural meaning like it's all just
Yeah.
classmates of the same school that you're planning. And so travel team meant you got to go play other schools,
Mhm.
with your best 10 or whatever. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. So you did that like fourth to sixth grade, I guess. And
Fourth to
then
fifth grade, and then middle
what
school.
were the middle school years like?
Yep.
What was
So
that
middle
transition?
school for me, we had sixth, seventh, and eighth grade. I went to Southside Middle School, also in Manchester. I ended up, we had like an A team and a B team, so basically varsity and junior varsity. And me and my friend were the only two sixth graders to make the A team. And I actually got the
Nice.
chance to play with my sister for a year because she was 2 years older than me. So I was
Oh yeah.
playing on the school team with my sister, which is really fun. We weren't sure if that was going to be a possibility, but it ended up
Yeah.
being a recurring theme as you'll see throughout the process.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's really good.
Yeah.
So you played there, like you were on the varsity team for sixth, seventh, and eighth, then I imagine.
Yeah.
Um, cool. And like, what were some highlights from those years? Like, what was the best part of playing on the middle school team?
I would have to say just the relationships that I was able to like build from the beginning, because a lot of those people I ended up playing with all throughout middle school into high school and some even through college. So
Hmm.
when I look back, I actually have a teammate that I've been playing with at Rivier now that I've been playing against her since elementary school. So
Nice.
there's that. And my best friend, who kind of like my other half when it came to basketball all throughout high school, we've been playing since elementary school all the way up until our senior year together until she decided to stop playing. And then
Nice.
also a lot of that spilled over also.
Yeah. Oh, that's cool. It really is its own network world of basketball, especially in New Hampshire. Like it's the ultimate small pond in a way. It's like if
Definitely.
you're any good at all, or you're out there playing a lot, you're gonna know pretty quickly everybody that there is to know.
Yep.
That's cool to have that continuity though. Like from elementary school through college is a
Mhm.
pretty long run as a teammate.
Yeah, definitely.
Cool. So then tell me about your high school years. I guess the pivotal point in my mind is always like that threshold of freshman tryouts. Like you're coming out of middle school, you know all these other middle schools are funneling into the high school and you don't really know where you are in that hierarchy or like if you're gonna make it and can be kind of stressful. So what was that like for you?
Yeah, it was definitely a little stressful. Throughout middle school, I think starting in seventh grade, I started going to Memorial, the high school I went to. There are open gyms
Okay.
throughout the summer to play with my sister also, just so I could do something over the summer.
Yeah.
Because that was AAU, but I still wanted to do more just where I could, and obviously to get my name into the picture for high school, so it would just be a little bit easier for me. And I did
Absolutely.
well there, and they had the coach at the time very interested in me, even as a seventh grader. But when I came in, she was left. So
Mm,
they're expecting a brand new coach that no one knows. He came from a neighboring school in the city, but it was from a Division II school, West High School. So when we started open gyms that summer, everybody was really excited, but also nervous because it's a brand new coach. It doesn't matter who you were last year. Obviously, you got to
right.
come to impress just at any level.
Mm,
So that was a completely fresh start for me. And we had the open gyms and he liked me. We grew a relationship really strong and quickly. I remember the main thing that happened was came in and we're just looking at the banners. We haven't won one. I don't even know if we've won one. I think the last one might have been in like the 70s or something for
yeah.
girls basketball. And I'm like, I'm leaving with one. We're leaving with one. So
Mm,
yeah,
that's pretty cool.
yeah.
Um, and so tell me more about that open gym experience. Like I don't know, it's kind of because there's AAU now and there's a lot more options to play, I guess. Like what I find is most parents, at least, with an eighth grader that's rising freshman in the next fall, like they don't think about going to see what the high school program's like and like getting involved in the open gym or like meeting the coaches. Like they like wait until tryouts and then you're like, you're this unknown quantity coming into a tryout with coaches that have never seen you. And like, then it's the pressure is that much higher in my mind. It's like you have this one day or, maybe 3 or 4 days of tryouts to like have an awesome showing and prove yourself and where you're gonna, that's gonna determine where you fall across the program and on the teams and all that. And so tell me more about like how that experience went. Like you were there early, obviously, because your sister was already in the high school program. But seventh grade summer, eighth grade summer, then new coach going into ninth grade. Like you'd been there with all the players for 2.5 years at that point, so it was
Yep.
kind of familiar territory.
Yeah.
But tell me more about what was it like to play as a seventh grader with the high school girls in that kind of open gym environment?
Yeah, so in seventh grade, my sister was a freshman at that point. So I was playing with her class at least for 1 year in middle school. So I
Yeah.
knew them pretty well, and they happened to be a really big class. I think we graduated eight when I was a sophomore and they were seniors. So it was a big group of them. A couple of them were on varsity their freshman year. Some were on GV. We had a freshman team at that point. So it was definitely very mixed. But yeah, I would just go. We would really just play pickup so everybody could just have a good time and have get yourself in front of the coach that was there at the time.
Yeah.
And then once it was our turn to really come in as freshmen, the new coach came and same kind of thing. I think we would start with maybe a couple drills, but it was always very 5-on-5 heavy, just so you could really see and showcase your skills to the coach.
Yeah.
So yeah, he would try and split up the teams pretty evenly, but it was just a lot of fun to play with all the girls around. And he's always been very good with inviting other people, other players from around if we didn't have the numbers, because
Mm.
Manchester can be iffy sometimes. A lot of people have to work because not so many people are as fortunate, but yeah, he's very good with communicating all the open gyms to everyone. So it was always pretty easy to get there.
Nice. Oh, that's great. And so where did you land, freshman season? Did you end up playing on the freshman team or were you bumped up? due to your skill and experience level by that point.
Yeah, so my freshman year, I ended up swinging on to varsity, but playing also on JV so I could get some more minutes just in case. So I
Yeah.
think you're allowed to play 5 quarters total, like it's either 5 or 6. I'm pretty sure it's 5. So
Yeah.
he was going to start me doing 3 quarters on JV and 2 on varsity, but after my first game, he cut that to I think 2 max, so he could have me for 3 or even 4.
Mm.
So obviously, if you play even 1 minute and a quarter, it counts. So you have to be very strategic with how you want to play. And my first game, we played Londonderry High School, and I did very well in the JV game. I think I'd only ended up playing half the game. So he had me for the 3 quarters of the varsity game. And I think I ended up being the second leading scorer of that game. So that was really fun for me. Um, and throughout, like I said, he slowly cut the JV minutes, and I ended up being the 6 man for varsity basically my first 2 years actually, because I had, like I said, 8 people in front of me.
Right.
Kind of had my position that I've talked to my coach for. I'm like, you could have started me, but it was still high school. So, and it was a lot of fun for me to come off the bench though, because no one is really expecting the 6 man to be someone like I was at the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And what was it like, competing? Obviously you succeeded pretty well right away, but did you have nerves or like what was your mindset like? I'm going into the varsity game as a freshman, that first game against Londonderry. How'd you feel about that?
Definitely some nerves, but I think being able to play in the game right before helped calm some of those nerves because a lot of those were settled then. So I already felt warmed up and ready to go. It's not like it was okay. Here's my first shot of my high school career. Does it go in or not? I've already got that hard part out of the way.
Right.
Yeah,
First touch of the floor was already covered in the JV game.
exactly.
And
Yeah.
and how were you thinking about that? Like were you pretty satisfied having minutes on both? Like were you like, darn it, I wish I could have made it all varsity that first season?
Obviously the goal for everyone, I think, going into high school is you want to play at the highest level you can all the time. But I definitely appreciate my time on JV because I was able to kind of work out the kinks, I think, and even just the nerves. I was able to do a lot of the things that I wouldn't feel as comfortable doing right away in the varsity games in JV. So I think it gave me more confidence in a way because I knew I had so much extra time to work on my skills because I was even doing 2 practices a day after school. So I
Yeah.
would practice with JV for 2 hours and then another 2 hours. I'd be practicing with varsity right after. So I would go to school from 7 to 3. I would practice 3:30 to 5 or 5:30, and I'd be there probably till like 9 o'clock at night sometimes. So I was
Mhm.
just getting the constant reps that I always wanted. So I think it actually really benefited me.
That's great.
Yeah.
And when you got to 10th grade year, did you still play any minutes on JV or were you all varsity by that point?
I did not. I was all varsity at that point.
Cool.
Yeah.
Something I hear a lot from players. I guess it's more common in 10th grade. Like they played a year for either the reserve team or the freshman team, or sometimes the JV team in their first year if the school doesn't even have a freshman team. But the mindset I hear a lot is, if I'm not on varsity my second year, then, I'm just gonna quit and not play. Like it's varsity or bust. And, some coaches will feel that pressure and be like, okay, you're on varsity, but then they're like 10th, 11th, 12th man on the bench and they never touch the floor for that whole season in games. And then they show up the next year and they get cut because like they didn't get an experience to continue developing.
Yeah.
They were a varsity player that never played a minute. And to me, that's just stupidity in a lot of ways. Like I'd rather you play 4 quarters of JV and 1 quarter varsity, and maybe you're still on the bench, but you're getting a lot of playing experience. And so
Exactly.
sounds like you were able to navigate that perfectly. You got a little bit of both, and
Yeah.
then the second year you got to move to varsity, and sounds like you play a lot of minutes as the sixth man. Like,
Oh
what would
yeah.
you say average minutes per game you were in that 10th grade year?
I'd probably say between 25 to even 35, anywhere in that range, because we were a
Right.
pretty solid team too. So there was a good amount of games throughout the year that we would just kind of walk all over the team. So since I wasn't a starter, I kind of reaped the benefits of that. So I'd still get to play like a good amount of minutes, even though I
Yeah,
was pretty good. So
awesome.
yeah.
And then what year was it that you did get one of those banners in the gym before you left?
So sadly, My senior year was COVID. So um, what had happened was that was the year we were supposed to win it all. But we had got to our quarterfinal game against Goffstown. They were not super familiar to us because they had just entered the league from Division II the previous year. And this is not COVID's fault, obviously, but you'll see how that works out. We ended up losing the game,
Okay.
like 2 or 3. But what happened afterwards, because it was very obvious it was a game we were supposed to win. There was some questionable refereeing going on and some other things. And what ended up happening was BG, Bishop Girton, they're from Nashua. They've always been the powerhouse school. They won, I think, 3 back to back to back. And if they
Right.
didn't win the next year, it'd be the next year. So they were the powerhouse, and we were primed to face them in the next round. And COVID happened. So it was Londonderry and Goffstown, and then Bedford and BG left. And instead of having the game because they couldn't hold them anymore, the 2 teams that were the higher seeds on each sides got the banner. So if we just won that game that we were supposed to, we would win the banner. But
Would have had
either
a
way, yeah,
complimentary banner without having to
exactly.
face down Bishop Girton. That would have been
Yep.
nice.
Yep.
Right.
And obviously the complimentary banner wouldn't even be as satisfying, but it was so
Sure. The
close.
little asterisk always
On the
still in your
goal.
mind.
Exactly.
So you were that close. Lost a game by 2. That would have put you in the finals there.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah,
That's tough.
it is.
And then how was the junior year? We kind of skipped over that one, but how far did you guys go in your junior year?
Yeah, I'd say junior year was actually my best year individually and as a team. We made it to the Final Four, but we always faced BG in the Final Four.
Yeah.
So we lost to them, but it was a really successful year for the team. That was the year before that. My sophomore year was really the turning point for the program itself, because we went from my freshman year being a 500 team, and even before that they were winning like 2 3 games max a year. So
Yeah.
we went to like a 500 team, and then all the next years we ended up being a Final Four team. So junior year was really like, okay, even though we just graduated 8 seniors, like we're still here, and we
Mm.
were able to show that we were still a really good contender.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a really good point. Like any team that graduates 8 seniors, like everybody's like, we don't expect much for the next 3 years.
Exactly.
Right?
Yep.
Like turn around the next season and make it to the Final Four is a really big sign.
Yeah.
All right. So you kind of had the demoralizing end to your senior year of we can't play anymore. We just lost the game by 2. Nobody's getting an actual championship,
Uh-huh.
and we didn't get a part of the complimentary banner. So
Yep.
then, what was your state of mind like at that point?
It was obviously like a sad ending because we knew that we were definitely capable of going out on top. But I think because I had 4 more years ahead of me that I've been so excited for and preparing for, it wasn't too hard to kind of move on, because I knew what was coming next and I was ready for it. So for some, high school is the end of an era of the sport you've been playing your whole life, and that's totally fine. But for me, it's college is what I've been looking forward to since I was small. And it's one of those things that I feel like a lot of people would agree, like you don't think you're ever going to get there, and then you're just there. So
Yeah.
it was definitely the next step that I was ready for.
So tell me more about that. Like, when did you decide that you were gonna make a run to play college basketball? Like, that was the thing.
I think I don't even know like a specific time, but I think it was just always kind of like a given for me. I don't think I really ever had to tell anybody. I just kind of knew, not anything I really decided one day. It was just kind of, yeah, there's high school and obviously I'm going to play in college.
Yeah, right. That's great. And then when did you actually commit to Rivier? Like, it sounded like that was already well lined up, by the time you were done with your senior season of high school. So it was like not that disappointing in that, next step was already lined up. I'm ready to roll. So when did you commit to Rivier and kind of make that decision?
So funny enough, Rivier was my last choice when I first started the
Okay.
whole recruiting process. And big credit was that it was close to home. And when I was younger in high school, I was like, I want to go to a big school. I want to go far away from home. I want to have that type of experience. And throughout AAU and high school, we definitely didn't I think my family didn't fully know how to navigate the whole system of how it really works to get your name into the right places and in front of the right people so you can be set up to be recruited by heavy D2, heavy D1 programs to possibly get a scholarship. So going into my senior year, had no offers, nothing. I had some interest from SNU and St. Anselm, both Division II schools in the area. I had a little bit of interest from UNH, but it was kind of like a last minute thing. So I was really deciding between a couple Division III schools in the area, Rivier, Suffolk University in Boston, Emmanuel College also in Boston, and then Becker College, which was in Worcester. They're no longer actually a thing. They were shut down, so thank God I didn't go there.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Yeah. But long story short, we can get into the whole decision-making process after, I'm guessing, but I committed to Rivier in February of my senior year. So I was trying to get it done sooner rather than later, but it was definitely a big decision. So I took my time.
It
It
was
was
like
for my
just
last.
a time decision too. 'Cause it's like,
Yeah.
you know,
Mhm.
February decision was made, March was COVID and end of season and all that.
Yep.
And wow, so you just got it lined up. I didn't know that.
Yep.
Um, yeah, that's interesting. So I guess looking back on it now, like it sounds like you've learned a little bit more. It's definitely a realm that I'm not familiar with. Like I try to, point parents to other people that know better about the recruiting process because it's just not a realm. I didn't go through it myself. I never played college basketball, and like I don't have that side of things, well understood. So tell me about kind of what you know now, like what would you advise parents and players, in high school if they want to play college basketball? Like, what are the steps that they should be taking?
So, after my experience, so I started AAU officially in like fourth grade, very young. I played on just kind of like an entry level team. We were the Rockettes, Granite State Rockettes. I played there fourth, fifth, and sixth grade. And
Yeah.
then I actually took a year off of AAU my seventh grade year and got a personal trainer. So my dad set up one-on-one training for me and my sister with a really great guy. He was in the G League and he had a lot of knowledge. And I really credit a lot of my growth, I think, to that 1 year alone, because I think you're really able to develop more as a player in that one-on-one setting because you can really pick out the things you need to work on. And obviously, when you're at a AAU practice full of other kids that are really all different levels, you could have someone that's just starting versus someone who probably shouldn't be on that team in the first place. So it's
Mm.
really hard for players to develop in that type of setting, especially when pretty sure we only had about 2 practices a week for AAU. So it's very group focused. So there's only so much you can do. So one of my um one of the advice I would give to parents is at least start your kid with the one-on-one stuff before getting into AAU. And
Mm.
age level, I would say that all depends on probably what your kid would want to do. Like, hey, do you want to do this? But I don't know about that. Just really, that
Yeah.
would depend more family to family. But um, after the seventh grade year, I started looking for better teams. And I had always heard of this team, BDS, around. They were a very good team in the area. And I knew that I want to try to play with them at some point. And they were actually a lot of the girls that were on like Bedford and BG, all the top teams in my area for school. But they're expensive. So we went with a different option for eighth grade and ninth grade year for me. And it was great and all, but another thing that's very important that is hard to understand if you haven't been in the world beforehand is it all depends on the team that you're on, the connections that they have, and how far they can get you. So even someone with a very high skill set, if you're not put in front of the right people, it's going to be very difficult to get offers from the schools that you may want to get them from. So after my ninth and 10th grade year, I understood this by now, like, okay, I really need to get to a different team so I can get to where I want to be. So that's when I actually played against the BDS coach in one of my JV games so I guess this was actually my ninth and 10th grade year. I played in front of him because he was the JV coach of another team I was playing, and I lit them up basically in the first half.
Yeah.
And he came up to me after the game. He's like, look, you need to come play AAU for me. You can come try out.
Yeah.
And at that point we were already halfway into the AAU season, I think. So I just did like an individual tryout with two of his other girls, and admittedly, probably the worst tryout I've had in my life. I was nervous. I had practice in the morning and a different AU tryout that day. So it was like 5 o'clock and I've already done a million things on
Yeah.
top of the nerves. So it was a very bad tryout, in my opinion, looking back. And they had told me, look, like at this point, we're kind of partway through. If you'd like, you can come to our practices, but we don't have a spot for you at the time.
Mm.
So I would go to my other AAU team's practices and I would also go to theirs because they were definitely at a very higher level than what
Mm.
I was used to. So those really pushed me and made me realize the things that I would have to do to be able to play on these teams. So
Mm.
the next year is when I was on time. We'd try out in the group setting, and I made the team. And I actually ended up bringing my high school coach and a couple other my friends from my high school team with me, and they decided to start playing with me. And that was kind of when the BDS era started for me, and we finished all together. So I was playing with two of my best friends that I've been playing with for years, and then one from actually our rival school that I've known forever, also from AAU.
Nice.
Yeah. And still, this team at that point, they had all those great players, but at the time that I came in, they were on their way out. They were leaving. So it was kind of up to us to rebuild the program. And there was a time my last year of AAU where I had a decision to make. It was either I stay here or I go to the powerhouse AAU team in the area that everybody knows about. Everybody knows this is where you go if you want to play Division 2, Division 1. It was rivals basketball. And one thing to kind of sum up my experience with basketball and life in general is I'm a very loyal player and person. So I think I let my loyalties to my coaches and my friends get in the way of making that next step to get to that team where I needed to be if I wanted to play at that level. So I ended up staying, had a great experience, but like I had mentioned, it's very hard to get the offers that you need if you're not in front of the right people at the right time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a really tough choice to make. I mean, you're
It is, yeah.
talking
I've been
about
playing with them for
your
years.
strength and relationships and your friends and your teammates, like you've known since elementary school. And like, I'm gonna ditch you guys is what it feels like. I'm gonna ditch
Exactly.
you guys, go to this program so I can get seen and go, play at a higher level.
Exactly.
It's really, really tough.
Mhm.
So how do you think it would have changed things if you did do that and played with the rivals for, I guess that was your junior year season, like
Yes.
going into senior year that following fall, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that definitely would have changed things. They were always known to go to the right tournaments, and they already had the connections with the coaches that you really need to be able to be seen. So
Yeah.
I really do think, looking back, if I were to take that chance, I probably would have ended up somewhere different and possibly with a scholarship offer. But I've been leaning very heavily into everything happens for a reason lately. So, but I'm definitely glad I got that experience because now if and when I do have kids one day, I'm going to have the knowledge to point them in the right direction if that's where they choose to go. And
Mhm.
anyone that asks me, that's exactly what I'll say. If you want to get to a really high level, find that top tier team in your area. And if you're not so worried about it, maybe don't. It's up to you. But I would say that's always where you should probably be.
Yeah. And then I think, one area that's, I don't even know the best way to describe this, but I think over time, the idea of playing at the highest level team in front of the best coaches has been pushed down until now it's the fourth grader. Like when you started, like the fourth grader needs to be on that elite level team and nationally ranked and go to a national tournament. Like, and I'm trying to calibrate to parents, like, when is it actually a benefit? Because like most players are not ready. Like, you
Yeah,
know, um, what's the term is exposure, right? And there's two takes on exposure. Like you can be exposed that you're actually not very good, or you
exactly.
can get exposure to the highest level college coaches.
Mhm.
And so I guess just from your experience and being around a lot of other college basketball players now, what do you think is like the essential time point, like looking across your high school years or earlier if you think necessary? When do you think that AAU is the best, most high benefit to a player being in, really high level competition like that?
I've been thinking about this a lot lately because I think it's something I would have done a little differently. I would have to say probably eighth or even ninth grade because no one's really looking at you before then to go to college when you're in seventh grade. Eighth grade, if you're very good, I've seen eighth graders get offers from college before. So that's
Yeah.
why I would say that age. And then that's obviously the point also where you're going to be going into high school soon. So you really want to make sure your skills are where they should be if you want to play at all, even at any level. So I would say eighth grade would be a really good spot. And then I'd say anytime before then, like I mentioned, really work on the one-on-one training so you can really get the fundamentals down because at the end of the day, you can't move forward without the fundamentals. If you can't get the footwork down, you're not going to be able to do all the crazy moves that you see people in the NBA doing. So,
Right. No, I think that's good. I think that's kind of in line with my experience. I've been
mm,
trying to kind of refine that. And like in some ways, I think even later, like, 10th grade is really when you're legitimately looking to be recruited. Because even eighth grade, like you might be the biggest kid in your class, especially on the boys' side. Like you could be a 6'5" eighth grader
yeah,
with an okay skill set, and you're like crushing everybody because you're
yeah,
6'5". And then 2 years later, you're still 6'5" and you haven't progressed in your skill. And like coaches are like, now is when it matters. Like 10th grade is when you actually look somewhat like what you would continue to look like in college. And
exactly.
so, I think eighth grade is a good starting point. But, we see like fifth grade, travel AAU team, sixth grade, seventh grade, like you're playing for so many games, so many years. And then, the stats are out there, like 70% of eighth graders are quitting and
Exactly.
not
Yeah.
playing anymore. And I think a lot of that comes from too much too soon. It's like I don't have the skill set yet, so I feel like I suck, and the pressure is so high that when I suck, I get subbed out of the game, and like,
Yeah.
I just feel like I'm a terrible player all the time until I'm doing all this work and I don't see any of the benefits, so I might as well quit and do something else and hang up
Yeah.
the jersey. Right. And that's a huge shame to me. Like I've developed the kind of the catchphrase now that everybody's a rec player eventually. Right.
Yeah.
Either it's like at eighth grade, like, I'm hanging it up, I'm gonna go play with my friends in the park, play in the rec league, or I might go play overseas and have a 20-year career, and then I come back at age 40 and I'm still gonna play in the men's league in Hampton, New Hampshire. And
Yeah.
so, trying to get over that hump of skill and enjoy basketball so that you can step on the court with anybody anywhere in the world and like have fun with it for a lifetime is like I think that's where it's at. It's like all
Definitely.
the AAU intensity of pressure before eighth grade is like, what are we actually accomplishing with that? It's kind of
Exactly.
my question,
Yeah.
right? And there's the balance between, one-on-one training, like what my evolution of thinking has become is there's an upper limit to that effectiveness translating to a game. And
Yes.
so what I actually like is 3-on-3, which we can talk about your 3x3 experience. I'd love to hear about. But connecting one on nobody to 3-on-3 to then 5-on-5 over time is where I found to be the biggest leverage because most players are either doing stationary, like isolated drills with no decision making and no defense, and they're staring at the wall in their garage and pounding the ball, or they're running a 5-on-5 scripted offense and kind of never the two shall meet. Like coaches don't work at all in the middle. It's like,
Yes.
do this ball handling drill. We play 5-on-5 and we had a lot of turnovers. Go do this ball handling drill again. It's not like, let's get you running against two live defenders and try to handle the ball and outrun people.
Yeah.
It's just work on those two ends of the spectrum. And
Yeah.
so I think there's a lot of value in having that progression over time so that you're not hitting too intense too early, but you're also, not staying only at the rec level until suddenly you hit high school and decide to try out and you're like, I don't have any skill. I got cut and my career is over at that point. So a lot of balancing act in between there. So I appreciate having your perspective. I do think having a later start point to that AAU circuit, if your intention is to play college basketball, like you want to be looking like you might potentially become a college level player before you try that, right?
Exactly.
Like, and it's kind of like, I don't know if you would agree with this just on the academic side, but I think of college as like a place for smart people to continue building their skill set. And, everybody's kind of promise from college is like you're going to get a higher income from that.
Mhm.
But, people now look at it as like, if I take a not smart person and put them in college, they'll suddenly come out the other side as a smart person. It's like that doesn't work.
Mm-mm.
Basketball doesn't work that way either, right? It's like
Exactly.
I take a terrible player and play a lot of AAU games, they're still a terrible player with a lot of experience.
Yes.
Versus if I take a skilled player and play at the highest level AAU and they succeed, now we have a high skilled player that is being seen and in the right place at the right time.
Yeah, I agree.
Cool. I wasn't sure if you would agree. That's good to hear.
Yeah, I do.
All right, so let's get back to the journey now. Tell me about your college years at Rivier. You mentioned, I guess the brief one is COVID happened the first year, so you didn't get much action. What actually happened during that year? Did you guys have like practice and workouts, or were you like, locked in your dorm and not allowed to see anybody because of COVID rules? How did that actually go?
Yeah, so my freshman year, we were grateful enough that our university is pretty small, so we were still able to get from the student experience, we were still able to go to class. Also, everybody was masked up and everything, so thankfully it didn't take away from that experience completely.
Hmm.
But when it came to basketball, there was a tentative schedule over the summer to see if things were gonna resolve itself, but we quickly realized that that was not gonna happen.
Hmm.
So the plan was for each semester, we would have 5 weeks of practice. So first semester, we had those 5 weeks. First week was the most kind of separate because we were seeing how everything would go.
Yeah.
So we would have half the team on one side of the court, half the team on the other. We'd be doing as much as we can with those type of numbers because I want to say we had maybe 10 or 12 girls
Yeah.
um, at the time. So we were playing in masks. We were doing all the conditioning in masks. So it was really different. Nothing I've ever experienced or anyone for that matter, for
Sure.
sure. Everybody was used to playing basketball in a mask. And we
Yeah.
were definitely questioning if it was even healthy at that point. But
Right.
um, yeah, so first semester, 5 weeks. The first week or two was that kind of separate. And then at week three, we were able to start putting the whole team together. So we were able to start doing some more drills. We never got to play like 5-on-5. I think the max we did was 3v3.
Hmm.
Um, and then throughout this process, if anyone were to test positive, because at that point we were also testing weekly,
Yeah.
the whole thing was shut down. So we had to be very, very careful to not test positive or be exposed to anyone who had tested positive because we knew this is our 5 weeks, this is all we're getting. We really
Yeah.
need to make sure that we're careful. So we did it first semester, second semester, same type of deal. We did a lot of 3v3v3, which is a drill we still do. So it's the continuous
Yeah.
3v3v3. If you score, you stay, next team comes on, and that
My
was good.
favorites. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's great.
Um, so that's really how the first year went. I think we capped it off with a inter-squad scrimmage, which was the highlight of my year because it was the only real type of basketball we got. So we had some refs come in. We got to put the jerseys on one time and one time only. So that was a lot of fun. No one could come watch, but it was still the best part of it all.
Wow. That's quite a year to get started with college basketball.
Yeah,
I'm sure not anything like your expectations of like this big dream I have of playing college basketball. Like I'm
exactly.
running sprints in a mask. Like this is not what I signed up for.
Yep, exactly.
Wow. So what was your mental state like going through that year, I guess 2 semesters and doing 5 weeks of practice and doing your academic studies? Like how were you feeling about things at that point?
It was definitely a rough year for me because I've been always so active with basketball. So to have such a little time to do it, it was really hard for me.
Yeah.
It's always been my outlet for really everything. It's literally impossible for me to think of anything other than basketball when I'm playing. So it was definitely a struggle for me. I It was also my freshman year where I was the only one from my high school to go to Rivier.
Mhm.
So I was trying to make friends in such a weird closed off time and I wasn't in the same building as a lot of the people that I knew too and you weren't allowed to go in the other dorm buildings if you don't live there so
Sure.
it was pretty isolating so the 2 hour practice a day was really where I got my fulfillment from so it was
Mm.
difficult but we got through it that's all that matters I guess.
Right. This could be very rough. And there's
Yeah,
so many stories now from all the different age groups, so like how big of an impact that had.
yeah,
Uh,
definitely.
I guess I haven't talked to any college players about what that experience was like. So appreciate you sharing that.
course.
So tell me, from there, sophomore season, like you've been like held back, restrained. I just have this picture of like people holding you back for a whole year, and then they like unleash you on the world of college basketball in your sophomore year. So how did that go?
Yeah, I'd say it's exactly that. So over the 2 years that I had with like going into my first year and then the whole year of COVID also was, I think, where I made my biggest improvements in my game overall because I had so much time to just work on them. So I've always been a guard, more of a shooting guard than a point guard. But as I got to college, I knew I was kind of taller for a guard, not super tall, but I was also starting to build some muscle. So I was actually honing my like forward and like post game. So that was kind of the focus of my off seasons. And it really worked in my favor because of my size and the people that were going to be guarding me. So
Nice.
going into my sophomore year, my rookie year, I it was really good. Nobody knew who I was, so I really used that to my advantage. My first game, I think I scored 20 points. It was great. I actually didn't think it was my best game, but looking back, it's definitely impressive for a rookie to do.
Nice.
Um, I started the year getting player and rookie of the week, which funny enough, my coach actually started her college career off the same way,
Hmm.
which is funny because she's actually the all-time leading scorer at the school right now. So, and she was also the new coach as I was coming in. I didn't even mention that. I got recruited by a different head coach and she was a part of the recruiting process, but as an assistant. And he ended up leaving halfway through the season before me. So we came in and she was brand new. It was our first year coaching at any level. So it was all new for all of us. And that was definitely a really big rebuild year. We used COVID as a way to kind of see what we have at that point. Because before I got to Riv, it was a Division 3 school where people came and just say, yeah, sure, I'll play basketball. If they need people, I can play. I've done it before.
Sure.
That's kind of all it was. It was more like a hobby for those people. So
Hmm.
when I came in, my class, me and one other girl in particular, she was my co-captain the past 2 years. We were the class that really made the difference, and we were able to use COVID and our first year together to kind of pick out who really wants to be here and change the culture versus people who are just here to have like something to do after school.
Yeah.
So we had a lot of people quit. We had a lot of people just decide it wasn't for them anymore, which is totally fine.
Hmm.
I think it's honestly better for everyone that way. So you're not wasting your time on something where it might be too
Yeah.
much for you to handle also. So
I want to pause you there for a minute because I'd never really considered what that would look like again at the college level. Like I think that's a very, very common story, like the middle school level and even the freshman, maybe JV high school level, and especially on the girls' side for whatever reason. But I hear that complaint is like, I know this really serious player that like wants to go hard and like be here and like make this a really awesome experience and competitive atmosphere. And their teammates are like, yeah, I'll play because my friends are there and it's kind of fun,
exactly.
right? And it's completely mismatch, mentality, and is really, really frustrating. Like, there's nothing worse in my mind than being the best player on a unmotivated, non-passionate team, and like
Yeah.
nobody wants to practice, nobody wants to work hard. Every pass you throw is either going to be a turnover or an air ball that they shoot, and it's like, I can't handle this, right? So tell
Yeah.
me about how you changed that culture. That sounds like you and one other teammate decided like, hey, we're not gonna tolerate this. We're gonna clean house and make this a serious program.
Yeah, so I coming in, that was one of the things that we talked with the our now head coach with a lot about. She's like, look, you guys are the class that I want to bring in to make this change, especially once she got told like that coach won't be continuing anymore and you're taking over.
Mm.
And she was a very competitive player in her time there. Like I said, all-time leading scorer. She was not used to losing and she does not like losing, just like me and my friend. So we had that mindset coming in, and thankfully we did have a couple girls from the existing team that really wanted the same thing. My sister was one of them.
Yeah.
um, and I also had two captains who were juniors when I was a freshman. So we had the COVID year with them and then my rookie year to play with them, and thankfully they were willing to do whatever it took, even if it meant them losing their starting position. One of them, she was the starting point guard. That didn't happen. The year afterwards, she came off the bench, sometimes would only play 10 to 20 minutes a game, but because she saw the bigger picture and wanted what was best for the team, she did not care. She wanted to do whatever it was to get to that point. So we were fortunate enough to have leaders at the time because we were so young. Like I was a freshman, sophomore, and who am I to say, listen to me? So it's their team before mine. So yeah, they were a really, really big part of it. I looked up to them a lot in the way that they led our team, and I try to do the same things that they did as a captain. So we weeded out the people that didn't want to be there anymore. Sometimes it didn't end on the best note because they just weren't working for the team. Basketball, but also just like attitude wise, wouldn't line up. So we had some fireworks for some people leaving. Others, it was a very mutual, fine decision. Nobody was kicked off the team. Make that very clear, though. It was always at their own will. We were always welcoming to whoever wanted to be there because just like any team, there's also people that aren't the best, but if they're willing to work hard, that's all you can ever ask from a person, and they're a big part of the team.
Yeah, I
So
think about it as kind of a filter is all you set up is like, this is the new bar we're setting. Like,
yeah,
do you want to be a part of this or not? Like, they might moan and groan and leave, but it's like their decision to leave. I think that's a great
exactly.
way to go about it.
Yeah.
That's cool. So
Yeah.
then what did you see as a result of that? Like going into your junior year after that change, like what did that look like?
Yeah. So my junior year, let's see. So we ended my rookie year, we lost in the quarterfinals to one of the championship teams. They had lost in the championship, but they were like neck and neck contender who was going to win it that year. So that was actually our first time making playoffs, and I want to say like over 10 years for Riv. So that was big, really big thing. We went from before COVID, they won 2 games to
Okay.
we won 14 or I think 14, 10 or 14, something in between there. And then so we ended at the quarterfinals. We lost, but and then going into my junior year, we brought in a lot of transfers. I think we had 3. One
Mm,
of them I had knew from a sports camp I did at SNU, and she was a big. That's what we were always missing was a big.
mm,
So we brought her in. We brought in a Division 1 transfer from UNH who didn't really get the chance to play at that level because of something that had happened, and I played against her in high school the whole time. So she came in and then we got another transfer. So the name of that game was now we got to make everybody kind of work because we had this team beforehand last year. Everybody loved each other. It was great. And now we got 3 new people along with incoming freshmen also. So it was a very hard year just trying to get people to work because we did have some tensions. So we did well, but because of some things that were going on, it definitely could have went better. We made it to the semifinals though, so we made it to Final Four. It was really great. I think by that time we were really meshing a lot better and we were figuring things out. It was just one of those things where I think it happened just a little too late. If we were able to figure things out beforehand, we probably could have gone even further, especially with the talent that we had on the team. But considering everything that had happened, it was a really big growing year for us also because we did lose one of those transfers. It just didn't work out. Um, Views weren't the same everywhere, which is fine. So we used that as a growing year. Okay, like this is what we need to do better for the following year.
yeah,
And that brings me to this past season. So
cool. So then tell me the story of this past season.
yeah, so we were ready to win it all. Rivier has never won a conference championship in school history, and that was always something I set out to do when I was here, and we could see it this year. We started off not that great because we were playing really, really difficult competition for our non-conference schedule on purpose by design. A lot of people didn't understand that throughout the school, families. They were like, why are you guys just losing like almost every single game? It's
Yeah,
like, well, you got to see the bigger picture. These are really, really good teams that is going to prepare us for those top dogs in our conference. So we knew that the hard stuff we were doing at the beginning of the year was going to pay off. And we had went to a tournament over Thanksgiving break in California as a team. played some really good teams, but sadly, after the 2 games we had, my starting point guard retore her PCL, which
Mm,
is like 1 in a million.
mm, mm,
She's like my right hand when it came to like our styles of playing.
mm,
And so that was a really big loss. She was out for the season. Um, Still could see the light at the end of the tunnel because we did have a lot of other talent, but that was just an adjustment we're going to have to make because she was the quarterback. She was making those full court passes. She
mm,
could really push the ball up the floor, and now we didn't really have that. So that was an adjustment we had to make. And then a couple games later, our last game of the first semester, it was our first conference game. We were playing Emmanuel. They've won the past couple years also. They've either won or lost by a few points in the championship. We've never beat them in school history also. It was a back and forth game, whole entire game. I fouled out with like a minute left. We were down by like 2.
mm.
We ended up losing that game, but also in that game, my big tore her Achilles.
Oh my gosh.
So now we're like, okay, now what? We are down 2 players that play a lot of minutes, had a very big role in the team. So again, more adjustments need to be made. We needed people to step up to do more than what they've had to do. We had 3 freshmen this year who had to play a lot more minutes than they were definitely expecting or ready for. So they were kind of thrown to the fire. But um, yeah, it was a year of injury and adaptability and trying to see what we could still do with what we had. And we still had a great team. We ended up playing both of those opponents, Emmanuel and St. Joe's Maine, who is the reigning back-to-back champions. We played them the best we could, the best we've ever done, minus those 2 really big players. So obviously, I think if we had our full team this year, we would have won.
Yeah.
But we really surprised everybody, including ourselves, for sure. So all considering everything that happened, I would still call it a very successful season. We did a lot of things out of our comfort zone, really made a lot of those changes that we had to, and I think that's just priming us for a really good year this
Mm.
coming year.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Makes your decision even tougher, I guess, to use your extra year of eligibility, like knowing you got a strong team coming back and a
Mhm.
chance to make another run at it,
Yeah.
versus going overseas to play pro.
Yeah.
So tell me about, I guess, you've had several experiences that I'm aware of. I'm sure more that I've not, but you got involved with USA basketball for a little bit. You traveled, did some 3x3, I believe. So tell me about, I guess, your outside of your college play so far. What else you've been involved in?
Yeah, so after my rookie year, is when I got chosen to play for the USA Division 3 team in Brazil, in Rio. So that was a really cool experience. I've never been outside of the country. So I went there in July. I was actually there for my birthday, so that was fun. That was the first time I ever played a basketball game on my birthday because it's never happened.
Yeah.
So we played 4 games while we were there. That was a whole lot of fun. I met a lot of great players. Didn't think I'd ever experience something like that, especially at the Division 3 level. Um, so we won 3 games, we lost 1 game. It was still a lot of fun. The first game was the one that we had lost. We were playing a pretty good team. They actually had one person from their Brazil national team that plays against our Division 1 USA team. So very cool. Very enriching experience culturally also. My dad came with me on that trip, so that was a lot of fun. And then after that, it brings me probably to this year. I had a slower season my junior year, so not my best showing, still good, but it was a slower year for sure. And then after this past season, I was chosen to play in the WBCA Senior All-Star game. So there was 20 seniors picked throughout the whole country to play,
Mm.
and I went to Ohio and played there. We did a game. We had a practice the day before. They brought us around to see a lot of cool stuff. But that was probably one of the most fun trips I've ever been on because you're meeting all these new people. I played with like a 6'4" center, which I've never done before. Um, um, every other person on the team was an All-American, which was really awesome.
Mm.
I've never been in that type of company before.
Yeah.
So that was really great. And then the last thing, I got chosen to play for the senior all-star game for the New England Women's Basketball Association. So all of the players in the New England area. So I was playing with and against people that I've been playing with in my conference and out of conference. Had a lot of fun at that game. So yeah, I think those experiences were really great because I got to meet all these new people who had a lot of the same mindsets as I do when it comes to how we just want to play at the highest level and just be great. So
Awesome.
yeah,
That's really cool. So and it's the decision is still pending. So we'll have to get an update from you if you go pro, which I'm sure you will, if not this year, then next year. But I'd love to circle back after you've gone through that experience and made your choices and accepted a contract and hear, how that has gone. It's
yeah,
a cool next chapter coming up.
it is. Yeah.
I want to end with some quick hitter questions for you, and we'll wrap up with kind of final advice to parents, like I mentioned earlier. But first question is, what do you look for in a teammate? You talked about growing up with teammates that came with you all along. You talked about, new recruits and transfers, and what are the qualities you look for that makes it like, yes, I want this player on my team.
Yeah, so I would definitely say character first, like who are they as a person aside from basketball? Asking me this question, I think of one person right away on my team, and she barely plays a single minute. And I would take her probably over any other person on my team to play with because she wants to do whatever it takes in her role to win. So if that means sitting on the bench and being the loudest person ever doing flips when someone scores, definitely that type of energy and personality. Someone who doesn't just show up to practice but wants to be there. Obviously, everybody has those days where you really just it's not really I'm not really feeling it today. But I think there's definitely a difference between not wanting to be there and then just really not wanting to be there.
For sure.
So, and I've experienced both from who I've played with. I've had those days myself, but I can truly say like there's never been a day I'd rather be anywhere else.
Hmm.
So there's I those people who really just want to be there and get better and be there for their teammates also. Someone who's not gonna place blame when something goes wrong because that's just not fair. It's a team sport. So I would say character first.
Great.
Yeah.
What has worked well for you if you look across your whole path up until now? Like, what are the key things that you have done consistently that have really worked to move you forward?
That's a good question. Let's see. I would say one of my biggest things with basketball has always just been like repetition. So as a athlete myself, just being able to do the same thing over and over until I've really got it. So I know the way I work in particularly is footwork type of stuff. So I'm not going to get it down until like I really break everything down. So if I'm trying to learn a new move or a new sequence of anything, it's just all about repetition for me. I know that's a little different for everyone, but that's always worked very well for me. And then also just not being afraid to ask questions if you don't understand like how something is supposed to work, not being afraid to ask because you're going to fail either way. So you might as well at least ask.
Hmm.
Um, and
For sure.
then lastly, my biggest one would just be not to be afraid to fail because that I know for a fact is where I've grown the most.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Three good ones. All right. Now the opposite. What has not worked well for you? Like, what have you done that you feel like you could have completely skipped over and you would have been better off by not doing it, or something in that category?
I think like we mentioned, probably those early years of AAU, it was definitely fun and I got to play a lot more basketball because of it, but it definitely wasn't necessary. I don't know if I'd change it per se, but I know I probably would have been fine without it. And
Hmm.
then on a different like perspective, being a captain of the team, I would say if you have those players on your team that don't really share the same mindset as you, don't waste so much energy trying to understand like why don't they think this way. Just let it work itself out, and because it's always going to work itself out, they probably won't end up coming back or it'll change. So say
Hmm.
wasting energy on people that you don't really need to.
Hmm. So it's like, don't spend your time and energy trying to convince them to think your way. It's like, just let them go their own way.
Yeah, and it'll happen the way it should and needs to, from in my experience.
Oh, that's great. All right. Now, bigger question. If we were having this conversation 3 years from now and you're looking back at today, what would you have to have accomplished over those 3 years to be happy with your progress?
Yeah, so I would say definitely over the past week because I've been exposed to the opportunity to now actually play overseas. I, without a doubt in my mind, that's where I want to be. I think it's very hard for me now, especially to see anything other than basketball for my future for the next 10 years at least.
Hmm.
So definitely hope I'm somewhere. I really don't care where. I just want to be playing basketball somewhere and see the world at the same time. If I did go back to Riv, I hope I broke the records that I wanted to. One of my goals is to be named All-American this year because I was very close this year. So that be the all-time leading scorer because I'm less than 400 points away. Hopefully have a GNAC championship and make it far enough into the NCAA tournament. And then, like I said, just be overseas and be happy with either one.
That's great.
Yeah.
So if we look at, I guess there's really two paths there, but I think the Rivier one is more acute in, like, what that looks like. So if we're looking at breaking records, All-American, and championship, what are the dangers or the obstacles in your way of achieving that?
There's always injury with teammates or myself, but um I don't know. I think since it is still a Division 3 school, we're always going to have those people that just don't want it quite as much as everyone else. And I think that would be the biggest factor in holding the team back as a whole. Even one person can really change the whole dynamic of the team because if they don't want to be at practice, it's just going to bring people down. So I think the focus for me, if I do go back, is really making sure that my teammates know, like, look, a lot of us, this is our last chance because we're graduating like 8 or 9 this year. So it's essentially our whole team, what we've been working for our whole time at Rivier. So I think really making sure that they understand the magnitude of our last year together and the things that we can do if we decide to do it.
That's great. And what are the opportunities you see to move you toward that championship level team for your final year?
What do you mean by opportunities? Just want to clarify.
It was like, what are the things that you saw could have been done that were not done this past season that would have really pushed you guys over that threshold to be a championship level team? Without the injuries, like there's always the asterisk, like two of our best players were taken out.
Yeah.
But yeah, just on the opportunity side, what could move you forward that you didn't capitalize on this past season?
Yeah, well, that makes it pretty easy, I guess. Definitely the off-season work over this summer. It's going to be a very pivotal point if people decide to put in the extra work that they need to focus on the things that they didn't do so great last year on. Especially sorry, I don't know if you can hear my laptop. um, Especially the freshmen who were thrown into everything. I think they have a lot they can work with now. And then also the people that have been there for a while that still have things to work on, including myself. So off-season work, getting into the weight room, especially, that's going to prevent injury right at the forefront. I don't think enough of our team, it takes advantage of it. We do have like a couple of us that are diehard like gym people, but then the rest, it's kind of like, well, I just don't do that. So I think the off-season work along with the weight room is going to be the biggest chance for us to get there. And that's the easy part, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, it's the preparation work ahead of the season. That makes a
Yeah.
lot of sense. All right, the last part of that is, what is your biggest strength that you can leverage toward achieving that goal of, break the records, be an All-American, win a championship? What do you already have going for you that you could leverage even more toward achieving those?
Let's see. Aside from like physical stuff, I'd say my dedication probably. I think I've really proved to myself that I'm willing to do whatever it takes to get to that point. So there are still things I can work on to be a better teammate and be an even stronger person to face. So in that sense, just doing everything that I can to improve the small parts of my game that need the tweak to get me from where I am to a next level. And then physically, I'd probably just say, I don't know, like my shooting has always been my greatest gift that um I think is something that a lot of people struggle to guard me with because I'm bigger. So if you're not gonna get up real close, then I'm just probably gonna bully you into the paint, and then if not, I'll probably just shoot it. So I don't
Right.
know. I'd say more about the dedication part than the physical part.
No, that's great. Being a shooter with size like has its own advantages to it. Being
Yeah.
able to use that, like you said, bully people if they're smaller than you, and shoot over them if they're big and slow and don't want to come out to guard you on the perimeter, right? It's a
Yeah.
great double asset to have. All right, final question is, what's your advice to parents? If you look back at your seventh grade self and like what your parents were thinking going through at that point, like that's where a lot of our audience is. So like, what's your advice to parents of that seventh grader that they want to go play college basketball, but they really don't know, how to get there?
Yeah. So let's see. Obviously, like we talked about, focusing a lot on the individual, seeing where they can improve. But also, like you mentioned, I do like the idea a lot of getting, once you get the one-on-one stuff down, then moving into like the 3x3. I think that's a really great place next to start because yeah, you can do it with no defense, but you need to be able to do it with help defense and the one-on-one defense too. And then getting into the 5-on-5. So that slow progression, like we had talked about, I think is something that would be very useful that I didn't quite do in that order or at all, really. So not jumping into just the 5-on-5 AAU, but also not being like too hard on yourself if you feel like it's not going the way it should. My mom and dad didn't know enough about the AAU scene when we started for them to really get me into that prime position. So if you don't really know what teams are the one that they should be on or how to get there, just try and talk to people around you that you think maybe have that knowledge so you can get pointed in the right direction. And at the end of the day, it's all about just your kid having a good time. And if they want to get to that next level, then they'll get there one way or another.
No, that's great. That's kind of in line with what my recommendation has become, which is, be a shopper. If you're gonna
Yeah,
go try out for six different AAU teams. They all want you. They'll all accept you and put you on some team with some coach, but like find one that's a good fit for you and
exactly.
make that next step work in your favor by having a great experience all the time.
Mhm.
Um, well, that's great. This has been a really good conversation. Thanks for taking the time to tell the whole story of your journey. It's a good
Of
one so
course.
far,
I
with a
appreciate
lot
you
more to
asking.
come.
Yeah,
I'm excited for you.
thank you.
Thanks for coming on.
Of course. Thanks for having me.
Talk to you soon.
All right. Bye.
Bye.